Welcome to today's edition of Mental Health Matters. Today, we're going to be talking about stress in the workplace. I have Andre Williams on the show today. He's going to share his experience, how he dealt with stress or how he deal with stress in the workplace. Get you something to drink, get you a snack, and come on back. Good morning, Andre. Thank you for taking the time out to be on the show. Oh, we just had a little malfunction here, so we had to start over, but we're gonna be all right. So just reintroduce yourself and then we'll just jump right into it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. My name is Andre Williams. Good morning. Born and raised here in Sacramento, California. I've worked in the mental health and nonprofit sector for about almost 6 years now, as well as in the youth ministry for about 3 years. So yeah, excited to get to it. Thank you for having me today.
All right, thank you, brother. I really appreciate it. So before we had the malfunction, I asked you, why do you think it's important to have these conversations about stress in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I just believe that, it's not talked about enough. I think some people are groomed or taught to just kind of suppress it when, or just, remove it to the side or digress when it comes to workplace stress. And that leads to all kinds of stuff. You know, even workplace violence, even in some cases, right? It can escalate to that. So I think it's very important that it is discussed and talked about.
Yeah, I was sharing with you when we were talking about this earlier that I was one of those people, would wouldn't see anything or I'll see something or somebody lie on me or, whatever, and I think part of the reason why I didn't speak up back then was because of me being a Black male, to be honest with you. I
Right.
think I had those workplace fear or insecurities that, oh well, you don't want to say anything about that because you're Black, and it's the stigma that this is how we respond as a race, as a culture, you know
Right.
so it's kind of like just shut your mouth up, be grateful for what you got, and
Yep.
but I'm no longer like that now, that's for sure.
Absolutely.
um so let's get into because you before we had the malfunction, you talked about burnout. What do you think some of the things that could cause burnout, which obviously lead to stress or coupled with stress in the workplace?
Oh man, there's a lot, and I've been there. I want to first and start out by saying I've been there, right?
Yeah,
A couple different times in my career. Um, and I think sometimes it's just by attrition. It could just be, in that season, maybe you will have or you're required to carry a heavier workload, which will
yeah.
naturally just lead to stress. It could not be any auxiliary things. It could just be the amount of work that you have.
Hmm.
But sometimes it's for me, because I'll just piggyback on what you were saying. I'm kind of the same way, or I used to be, and I wouldn't speak up or and I wouldn't advocate,
Right.
self-advocate. So it just allowed certain things to just happen, and I would suppress my voice. I wouldn't advocate, and then it was a build up, and it would get to the point to where it was like, oh man, now I look around, and day in day out, it's harder to get up and go to work, and right,
Hmm.
and then it leads eventually to burnout. So I think, self advocacy is important.
Yes.
Speaking to a manager,
Yes.
um, speaking to somebody you trust, even if
Right.
it's not somebody at work, it could be a friend, it could be a
Yeah.
family member, just so that you can talk through that,
Yeah.
and try to avoid that.
Yes, that is so true. It's really good to have that support system outside of work, as well as inside of work. But outside of work, a person who's not associated with the job, it's they're less biased.
Yeah,
They can really give it to you looking at it for what it really is. But when you have those at work, like your manager, HR, they should definitely be people that you can talk to and feel comfortable that you're going to be treated fairly and be heard and
absolutely.
supported, and things like that. But when you don't feel you're getting that support or being heard and stuff like that, that really causes you to really not really do your best per se.
Right.
It causes you to like, who can I trust if I can't come to you guys or ask for help with these particular situations? It's kind of
For
like, what do
sure.
you do?
Right.
um I'll ask you a question. How would you respond if your manager gave you negative feedback in front of your peers?
That's a good one. That's a good one. You know, just being more, more mature and just, further along in my career,
Yeah.
it's something that I feel like that I actually take pretty well.
Yeah.
Especially because even though it doesn't feel good, I don't think
Yeah.
anybody likes to get criticized, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not a good feeling. But I've learned to frame it and try to extract the truth in it, right? And
Yeah.
just understand that that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
But previously in my career, I would be very embarrassed,
Yeah.
even if the criticism was accurate,
Yeah.
right? I would feel embarrassed, and then it would affect my work performance because I'd be like, oh man, why'd they do that?
Yeah.
Why'd they out here in front of everybody? But no, now is definitely something that I could take in stride a little bit better. And I think it's necessary to do that way.
Yeah. Myself, I don't have a problem with receiving feedback. I really don't. I
Yeah,
think I welcome that because it helps me to know what areas that my boss see that I may need to improve in. And me being with the particular company that, I will work for, if I would ever got feedback, I want to know those things so I could put my best foot forward. Because I want that I would
yes,
definitely make sure that that won't happen again or work on eliminating that situation. Now,
absolutely.
however, if my boss gave me feedback in front of my peers, that's what I'm going to have a major concern with,
Right, right.
um, and I actually experienced that one day with an agency where the supervisor, everybody was walking on eggshells around this one particular supervisor. And this person was known to just give it to the staff like raw, just very aggressive, direct,
Wow.
verbal abuse in his communication. So when I got hired and I met with the staff one-on-one, that was one of the things that they told me. It was kind of like it was a warning, but at the same time, see if you can help us in this area. And so as time started going on, I started to notice some things about this uh, supervisor, which was my manager. And one day something happened where a client was outside. I was actually on lunch, and a client was
Mm.
outside, and there was some things happening with the client or whatever. And I had no knowledge of what was going on outside, zero. And
Oh wow.
so when I walked back up, came from lunch, he was so irate, and he looked at me and he was like, "You need to do your effing job," like, and
Oh wow.
totally shocked.
Oh
And
my goodness.
I'm like, oh, I can't lie. I was extremely flustered, just off the top. And so I ended up just walking out, just leaving, getting in my car. I left about maybe like 25 or 30 minutes. And then I came back. And then he was extremely apologetic, extremely apologetic. He started to say that, oh, I didn't know that you was on lunch and blah, 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 blah. And I had to tell him, I said, regardless if I was on lunch or not, I pretty much told you're not going to talk to me like that. I said, you have a
Right.
reputation in this office to be very disrespectful towards the staff, but you're not going to talk to me like that. And like for like a week, he was very apologetic. You can, see, but I never had that issue out of him again because I set those boundaries up front.
Right.
Because you have a management position that does not give you the right to usurp your authority over your staff by being disrespectful.
Right. Right. No, absolutely. And I just piggyback on what you were saying. I think a lot of it matters on the tone,
Yeah,
the spirit behind it,
yeah,
right? Like, and just kind of like what's your intent,
right,
right?
right.
Like are you just lashing out in anger,
Yeah,
or and what I will say is, now being in the field of work that I do now,
yeah,
um it is a little bit different. So
yeah,
going from, maybe some of the for-profit stuff that I was doing and distributing, and then prior to my work in the community and in nonprofit, now I'm in human resources.
yeah.
And the feedback that they offer, believe it or not, and it was a total culture shock for me, is out in the open with your peers. They will
Wow.
publicly, yes, they publicly, when you make a mistake, or when you like, they will walk over to your desk and all your peers sitting there say, hey, did you get that email? What happened with that?
Wow.
Why did this happen? Right. And it's like it's a complete culture shock for me.
Wow.
Uh, and
Wow.
so that's why I initially answered the way I did. But piggybacking on like hearing your answer, absolutely, that is not okay.
Yeah.
uh in any circumstance, and anybody that may hear this, be empowered to use your voice, right? Because
Right.
that's where you used your voice and you stood up for yourself and you said that's not okay, right? Like, because it's not,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter how upset you are. You have to season your tone with grace as
Right.
much as possible, and respect when you're speaking to a staff member, for sure.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. Like, I'm in management and I never I couldn't even imagine talking to my anybody, direct reports, other managers. I could not imagine being, disrespectful to somebody like that. I couldn't because
Yeah.
I treat people the way I want to be treated. And
Boom.
once again, that was just a one-time situation with this particular individual. But
Right.
yeah, I couldn't stand for that. That one thing I can.
Yeah.
So, what is the most stressful situation you faced at work, Andre, and how did you handle it?
Ooh, let's see. Wow, I have a lot. Let's see here. I would say, honestly, when I was working with the veterans,
Okay.
um, there was a situation where it um it was very close to becoming violent and
Yeah.
physical, excuse me, between the veteran and the house manager. And
Wow.
it had came to a head. Like, it was like I was getting calls from the housing manager as well as the veteran, and their emotions were extremely high.
Yeah.
And so that the crisis intervention, man, like I drove over there. And this is, to me, the best medicine is to, again, to approach the situation immediately and directly, um, because there was no room for trying to, work both sides, and kind of like, from my position, I had to get there. So I went out there, um, got boots on the ground, spoke with the veteran face to face, de-escalated it with him, de-escalated it with the housing manager, um, and then found a solution. Found a
That's
solution
awesome.
that day. Was able to pivot and help move the veteran that afternoon to a whole nother placement. But that was extremely stressful because, um, again, it was uh, it was a white male and a black male, and
Right.
there was, so without me knowing both of those men intimately, how they grew up, what their triggers are, stuff like that. I can only assume from what they were telling me that there was some, and I believe both of them have been incarcerated before, so that's like a whole nother mindset,
Yeah.
and so it was just like things were boiling over like crazy, and I was sitting there like, oh my gosh, I that would be the worst on my watch
Yeah.
for something like that to happen. um, that would have been crazy. So that was
Yeah.
pretty stressful for sure. That one took some time for me to kind of digest and kind of like recover from a little bit just because of the nature of it. It was pretty
Yeah.
intense.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think I have many stressful situations at work, but I think one of the ones that stand out to me the most is um, not being able to get the support I need from the upper management team. When you manage a group of people and the culture
Yeah,
is a certain way that somewhat contradicts to the policies and procedures that they put in place. For
right,
me, that puts stressors out there. For example, if the employee handbook says, call your supervisor if you're going to be late. If you have any, you pretty much, if you're going to be late, calling off work, call your supervisor and things like that. Now, you know, but if the agency is like, you know, the staff is 10, I'm just gonna say 10 minutes late, and or 15 minutes late, 10 minutes late, and you give the staff feedback because it's been a habitual habit or ongoing, then when they go and tell the HR or whatever, and then you get feedback from HR like, well, you got to be flexible and blah 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 blah, and you're being flexible, you're doing all these things, you're just trying to adhere to what's in the employee handbook.
right.
And when you get different message from the HR people, whoever, then that causes, for me, it causes stress because it's like, oh my God, like,
Yeah,
on one hand, y'all wanted me to do this as a employee, as a manager, but then on the other hand, when I do it, I'm getting feedback like not to do it. So it
right.
puts your mindset in a place where, oh my God, like, can I really correct the staff? Can I really get the staff feedback? Because they're
Yeah,
all running to the higher ups. I mean, I remember at one point in time, I was, at a place, the staff was telling me flat out, I'm gonna go and tell HR and this, the director, like they would, because that was like their crutch. That's the way things were set up.
right.
So me as a manager, it put me, I started battling fear,
Yeah,
anxiety, stress, like all type of stuff that happening because that was
right.
the culture. And then when I went and talked to HR and this other person about some of the things that staff was saying to me, it's like it was like the staff was empowered to do it more, you know?
Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah. So I didn't really get the help and support I needed with that and as many other things, but it definitely put me in a place where I felt like I had to walk on eggshells because you just
Yeah,
never know. You know what I'm saying? You just
right.
never know.
Right. And let's be honest, right? When you're in those stressful situations, and stress and fear and anxiety
Yeah.
play a major role day in,
Yeah.
day out, what does that in turn do? It affects your work performance.
Yeah. It's 100%.
Right. And it's
100%.
like, wow, this is terrible, man. Like, oh my gosh. Like, and it could be so overwhelming at times. So
Yes.
yeah, man, definitely needs to be addressed when that happens for sure.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about what is a toxic work environment. What do you
Oh,
think
good one.
is a toxic work environment?
Man, it could be a lot. So, for me personally, when you talk about, because there's levels, right? So you have
Mhm.
your peers, and then you have upper management. I think first level is with your peers. If your
Yes.
peers are divisive and don't want to work as a team, or if they're they like to gossip, like or be cliques,
Uh-huh.
right? Like, well, we like, I like these two people, but I don't like those four people over there, right?
Yeah.
That could be very, very toxic.
Yeah.
And then, on the upper management level, just kind of like what you were referring to for that you experienced, right?
Yeah,
That's very toxic.
yeah,
Like, at the because now at that point, and I'm speaking as a lower staff member, I don't know what the expectation really is because if I read it in the handbook, one thing I try to execute it, but then I'm being reprimanded for
right,
executing what's in the handbook. I'm confused now.
right,
So
exactly, exactly. Yeah,
now I'm confused. So definitely gossiping, clicks,
yeah,
um, refusing to work as a team
hmm,
because I play sports. I play sports, and not only that, I I'm like you, man. Treat people how you love to be treated, and respect across the board.
yeah,
I'm the type of person I will respect you and speak to you the same way if you're the last person in the door. You just started today, and the CEO. I'm going to engage you the same. I'm going to talk to you. The same level of respect because you're a person.
yeah.
Um, and so when those things don't happen, that's just a melting pot of just divisive behavior that leads to a toxic environment, in my opinion.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I've, you know, I'm kind of in the mix of some of that, not necessarily me per se in the mix of that, but that's kind of what's going on, in my current workplace now. And man, dude, it's, you know, I don't, it's such a, it's bad. That's all I'm gonna say. It's really, really bad.
Right.
And trying to get the staff to kind of work together as a team, to be on one page, to be on the same page, to really get them to try to cut the gossip and cut the backbiting out, cut
Yeah.
all of this crazy stuff out.
Yeah.
It could be challenging, and at the same time, nobody wants to take accountability for what they're doing. you know
That one too.
yeah,
That's a tough
nobody
one.
want to take accountability, and everybody want to blame everybody, and blah 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 blah. And especially coming from a management perspective, you don't necessarily hear or see everything. It's the
Right.
staff members that is out there on the floor that's listening and seeing and doing and things like that. And so it makes it challenging to
Hmm.
really, really, really get this stuff taken care of. I know for me, I've talked about this stuff in staff meeting, gossip in staff meetings. Then instead,
Yeah.
let's put together the team. And I let my direct supervisor know, like I've made steps to try to eliminate this stuff, but it still goes on, and
Absolutely.
it's hard to get them to just well, don't see it. Come here, do your job. This is not your house. I know people say, "Oh, you go and work 40 hours a week, blah blah blah." But this is not my house. It's really not.
Right.
This is a place I'm coming to do a service. In exchange, I'm getting some wages, but this is not my
Right.
house. And I don't look at
Right.
this like my house, because if it was my house, none of this stuff would be going on. Period.
Absolutely.
No way.
Absolutely.
You know.
Absolutely.
So
Well, and too, I just want to add on to that is, my outlook or my viewpoint on that when working with a team and doing, when I was working in the community, working with the veterans, that in itself is a stressful job because the level of success and the
mhm.
level of outcome is solely based on this veteran's buy-in
Yeah,
and this person's willingness to work with the program,
yeah.
right? That in itself is stressful. When you add the element of gossiping
Mhm.
and all of these divisive clicky like relationships, it's like, dude, we're supposed to work together to
Yeah.
help the veterans not work against each other and just make it so much harder to do the job. So, in my head, I was just like, to me, it's simple. It just makes sense. But again, I play sports. So,
Yeah.
I've been on the team, there's a common goal. This person may really not like me, but guess what? There's a mutual respect when we come to practice or when we step, for games, we step in between those lines. We're on the same page
Yes.
because the common goal is to win,
Right.
right?
Right.
We ain't gotta go fishing.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
we don't gotta go grab lunch after practice every day. but guess what? We got a common goal. So
Yeah.
I think that right there would cut a lot of that stuff out. But to each his own.
Yeah, yeah. And it's also the agency culture, not just the office culture, but the agency
Yes,
culture. Because
yeah,
if the agency really adhere to what they're asking management to do, if they back the management up and trust that management is making an appropriate decisions when it comes to manage the staff, I think that will send a message to the staff and let them know that, we trust what the management is saying. You know what I'm
absolutely.
saying? But when you at a place where, you know, there's really no, it's just an open door policy, and we know that staff should be able to go to HR whenever, if they got any concerns, which I agree, they should be able to go there. But when you have a culture where anybody can step over your head and go and tell their side of the story, because we know if you give staff feedback, they don't like it, they
Yep.
are inclined to go and make stuff up, make you sound like the bad person. And now, you just got a whole culture of that. So what
Yeah.
do you do? I
Right.
worked
Right.
for an agency, and I'm not going to name the name, but it's one of the best agencies I worked for. I'm telling you, because this was somewhere I previously worked, and I really liked this agent because they were for everybody, the
Right.
managers, the clients, and the staff. You know what I'm saying? And so they set that tone. They set the tone as, we're going to be on the side of what is right. You also
Yes.
understand. And so
Yes.
I love that because, staff, I know one situation where um when I left there, one of my friends was telling me about how one of his, it had something to do with vacation or whatever, but I guess the one that was the girl that was working on him went to his direct supervisor, went over his head. And so his supervisor was like, well, did you talk to your supervisor? Pretty much, and his manager kicked her back to him because he's the one working directly with her. You know
Mm,
what I'm saying? So, she can manipulate his manager, but there are agencies where they're able to do that. They're able to do that, tell a story, lie, manipulate, and now you looked at like the bad person. And it's
right.
like, how do you fix that? How do you know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
rough, but I do recommend. And one of the things I have learned throughout my years working, I was telling somebody this the other day. I have a formal supervisor um, that she was like an Italian lady, whatever. And I remember this was before I moved to Illinois, and I remember her telling me, Jesse, you got to cover your butt in so many words. That's what she told me.
Yeah.
And she
Right.
this is a true story. This woman bought me, and I got this in my garage right now. This woman bought me a notebook, and she taught me how to document everything, my day to
Wow.
day, the good, the bad, like it was just, and but what I didn't know at the time was she was teaching me that because the environment that I was in, the people, the management, the other people up in that, they was all toxic, but I didn't know. But what she was
Mm,
doing, she was teaching me to document to cover myself, and ever since
right.
then, I don't care what agency I work for, what I do, I'm always documenting. I have to do it.
Right.
And it's not nothing like that I'm on anything. It's just like I want to make sure that I'm covered, you know,
Absolutely.
and that's dates,
Absolutely.
time, text matches, so all that, people. It's
Yeah.
important, very
Well,
important.
that's wisdom, and especially somebody that is responsible in a managerial position like yourself, that is
Yeah,
responsible for whole agencies, multiple staff members. You have to
yeah,
have that, because at some point, what if your if what if your manager just out of the blue, hey, do you have some information on
yeah,
so and so, or
right,
hey, imagine how that would even look. Just saying, oh no, I don't. Like,
right,
probably like, wow, what is this guy doing?
right, exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly right. uh how do you work in a toxic work environment? Like, what's your um what's your mannerism? Like, what do you do when you know you in a toxic work environment? Like, how do you
Well,
work
with the
in that and climb above all of the, things that's going on?
well, first and foremost, for me personally, is just prayer. I think that that's important because it helps you to center yourself, and it helps you to, I'm talking to myself, but to also just be at peace prior and in preparation
Hmm.
for your mind and for your spirit going into that toxic
Yes.
environment, right? And then once I get there, um, for me, that's when I really, really just hone in on my work.
Yes.
Um, and then I try to be a beacon of light. I try to be a mediator of sorts, if I can, and like an example. That way, when people who do like the gossip come around me, they know like, oh well, this guy's not having it.
Yeah.
Andre, this is pointless to even
Yeah.
talk like this or to try to ask or bring anything up like this with Andre because it's not gonna go anywhere.
Yes.
you
Absolutely.
know so to just try to be that exampleship and to operate on a whole nother frequency, you can call it, different energy. People have different, the ways to categorize it. But that's what works for me.
Yeah.
And it just really helps me keep the main thing, and then not allow, obviously, um the toxicity to come into my sphere,
Yeah.
into my mind, into my heart, but easier said than done. I will say that it's not like
Yeah.
a fixed all end all,
Yeah.
because as you well know, it's like a roller coaster when you work in a toxic environment, you know, and you might get hit on a high note one day, and
Yeah.
you go, oh my gosh, like you might need to take the rest of the day off and get you're
Yes.
like, man, I was not prepared for that,
Yes.
or like I couldn't even fathom that something like that would happen, or
Yeah.
what have you. So, but those are some of the things that I do to try to help work through that.
That's awesome. And I do agree that prayer definitely needs to be your first defense against
Yeah,
you know when you're working in that type of environment. One of the things I love too, that God will definitely give you insight, discernment,
yeah,
when things are going on, even before it's happening, you'll kind of know, what I'm saying. And so and for me, that's definitely for me, like you, it's very, very important to
yeah,
stay connected in prayer during those type of situations, man, because it's rough. It
yeah.
is rough, 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 rough. Especially if you're not getting the support that you need to eliminate that stuff, man. It's rough, man.
Absolutely.
Um, yeah. So let's talk about, how do you prevent a situation from getting too stressful to manage?
Man, so again, I think it comes to self-advocacy. So
Yeah.
self-advocacy, but also, and again, it took me a little while to get to this point, but self-awareness.
Yeah.
What is Andre's threshold or breaking point?
Yeah. Yeah.
What's my capacity to handle a particular workload,
Yeah.
or what's my emotional bandwidth,
Yeah.
like, when you're working in the toxic environment with a
Yeah.
difficult clientele, what does that look like, right?
Yeah.
So self advocacy, self awareness, those two things right there, man, are key,
Yeah.
uh, to me, because with those two things, then you can, again, you know how to speak up, how to manage it, how
Hmm.
to speak to the right people when you're talking to the right people, whether it's
Yeah.
HR, whether it's your manager, whether it's a friend or something.
Yeah.
You can express those things and set
Yeah.
yourself up for success.
Yeah. I like how you talked about both of those, self-awareness and advocacy, because I think those two go together. Everybody do have a breaking point. Everybody have a breaking
Yes.
point. Everybody knows, what their limit is when it comes to stress or a toxic environment.
Yeah.
and the ability to be able to advocate even before it gets to that your
Yes.
breaking point, and having the ability to advocate and try to get the help and support,
Correct.
it will help a lot to eliminate, you know, the stress or the anxiety if in fact you do get the support you need. But that's true. I think that uh more people need to advocate for themselves and be truthful and honest when they do it,
Yes.
and not trying to, and just take accountability when you do mess up or do
Absolutely.
something wrong, and just be really honest about, like, look, okay, I messed up, I dropped the ball on this, but this is the reason why, and blah 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 blah. But a lot of people are not. A lot of people get in these closed doors meetings and they just trying
Yep.
to save themselves. That's that's
Yep.
that's the whole goal, instead of just being honest and working with uh, the people to try to eliminate the negativity that's going on in the environment.
Absolutely, absolutely. And with that, I think a major component to people being able to be honest and transparent is intent, right? So what's
Yeah.
the intent
Yes.
of the decision that you made? What's the intent
Yes.
of the
Yes.
thinking process, right?
Yeah.
Because right, wrong, or indifferent, if I know my intent was right, or I
Yeah.
know right, like I had no problem. I could be totally wrong, and
Yeah. Right.
but hey, if I know my intent was pure, and I say, hey, I could regurgitate my thought process here, and like this is why I did what I did, or this is why I said what I said. I can live with the results,
Right.
and like you said, just it's a more of a willingness to be open and transparent. So I think that that's lacking um a lot. And I don't know if it's just the generation. I don't
Yeah.
know, I don't know what it is. Social media that's just kind of like, it's like a false reality. So people
Yeah.
think that they can like, implement that in their workplace or in the work. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
But it's definitely lacking for sure.
Yeah. One of the things that what I've done through the years is I'm very observant, super, super observant
Yeah.
when it comes to people individually. When I meet with my team one-on-one to do check-ins, or if we meet as a group, I always sit back and watch people's personality, how they move, what do they talk about? Are you sharing too much of your personal business and things like
Right.
that? And one of the things I discovered was when people come to work with a toxic mentality or personality, they're not just coming into this workplace because they're coming, bringing this stuff to the workplace because that's the type of person that they are outside of work. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And so that was some of the things I learned. I would walk past, like, there's been times I walk past and hear people talking about their personal business and, stuff I personally wouldn't share. I'm super private, meaning even if they're saying, oh, I'm just giving an example. Oh, I'm going on a date with this guy, then I'm going on a date with another guy the next night, or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
I sit back and I hear that, and then it causes me to think about how the person is at work. And I'm telling you, a lot of the people who are bringing the toxic energy at work, that's their type of personality outside of work. Some people love drama, love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They live for it. Like, some people cannot live without, drama and stress and negativity. I'm opposite. I don't like that in my life, and
Same.
that's one of the things I've learned. I've always tried to tell people, like, treat people the way you want to be treated, and bring this unity. But I'm telling you, but some people it's hard to do,
It
very
is.
hard to do.
For sure, for sure. And even like with people like that, sometimes they're a magnet to it.
Yeah,
They're a like they like it
yeah,
and they attract it.
yeah, yeah,
And it's just
yeah.
like even if they're not the primary
Yes,
person that's
yes,
promoting it, it's like it just is around them, man.
yes,
I'm like, oh Lord, that just no,
yeah, yeah.
get that far away from me.
Yeah, but that's even though, and that's true what you said, even though they're not the one who is perpetuating or starting all
Mhm.
this negativity, but there are people who still drawn to it, you
Mhm.
know, and it's crazy to me. Like
It is.
I don't like to be around that dude at all. And I'm not
Me either.
ignorant. I know in life you're gonna be dealing with things gonna happen and stuff. But
Right.
for me to just to be to be in my home every day, I can't do it. I can't do
No.
it. I can't do
Mm-mm.
it. You know, no way. Um, so let me ask you, because what advice would you give someone to calm down a colleague who's stressed out about office gossip?
That's a good question. Um, I think takes a certain type of person to be able to do that in a mature manner and not
Okay.
allow whatever negativity or whatever's going on affect you,
Yeah,
right? Because I feel like too many times what happens is, this person might be good natured in trying to help, but
yeah.
they end up getting pulled into the
Hmm.
river,
Hmm.
because they can't stand on their own morals or their own, like, hey, I
Yeah.
understand that's your viewpoint on it, or that, or what have you, but I don't feel the same way, but I can help you through that. So for me, it's just that.
I love the fact that, 'cause this just jogged my memory when you talked about people having personal problems at home and they bring it to work. Many years ago, I worked for an agency, and and I love this too. I worked for an agency, and I had hired this guy. He was there maybe like a month or so, and so the policy was, if you're late, contact your supervisor. If you call out work, try to give 4 or 5 hour notice or whatever, you know.
Right.
And so he was like 40 minutes late. He was supposed to be at a client's house. And
Oh wow.
so the overnight staff was blowing me up like, hey, he hasn't made it to work, blah, 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 blah. And so I called him like twice. He didn't pick up the phone or whatever. So I just told the overnight staff, I'll come over there and relieve you, and you can leave. But on my way over there to the client's house, the guy who's supposed to work the morning shift, he came. So he about like 40, well, I think 45 minutes late, didn't call me at all. And
Oh
so
wow.
when the overnight staff told me he made it, I told her, I said, well, just leave or whatever. Um, and so and I ended up calling him and said, hey, I noticed that you was late this morning going through my spiel. Like, what happened? That man cussed me out. When I say I was
Oh
so surprised,
yeah.
Andre. It was like, I was like, oh, that man cussed me out, hung up the phone. I said, okay. So I went right up to the office where my boss was.
Yep.
I kind of let her know what happened. My boss reached out to the overnight staff who had to stay like the 40, 45 minutes over. She got her feedback and blah, 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 blah. And my boss was like, Jesse, I need for you to send somebody else there. And we need to, because she wasn't playing.
Wow.
And I love the fact that, they had my back, because I didn't
Yes.
do nothing wrong. And
Yeah.
so we sat in a meeting. He left. I sent him out there. He came up there and stuff. And come to find out, him and his wife was having marital problems. Saying he was
Mm,
in the process of going through a divorce. I knew none of this. Military guy and everything.
wow.
Knew none of this. But
Yeah.
however, he still got to write up. He still definitely got to write up, because my boss is like, it's unacceptable. You don't talk to not just a
Yeah.
manager like that, anybody like that, this company. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and HR was involved. So they set the tone. After that, no more issues after guy. As a matter of fact, he ended up getting promoted. We actually got close as far as co-workers after that.
Oh wow.
No issues after that. The dude ended up getting promotion. I ended up, was able to promote him or whatever, like to one of the
Nice.
leads, and how like it was awesome. And it was just that situation. And that's when I kind of found out, like, okay, a lot of stuff that goes on in these people life at work, it's because something's going on personal, you
Right.
know.
Right.
So,
Absolutely, man. It is, man. And again, people, I don't think it's hard to acquire the skills or the tools to manage those things, manage home problems, manage
yeah.
work, manage relationships, all of that, if you don't go through something. So I
Right.
think that's important for people to understand too, is that there's this can't just read it in a book, and you can't just read, oh, okay, well, that's what I do when that happens.
Yeah.
Because there are emotions involved. We are human beings. You just don't know how you're gonna respond. But I feel like when you do endure those things and you're able to learn from them, and you can either, learn for what you applied, or apply what you have learned,
Yeah.
and utilize those things. And so, yeah, it's just life,
Yeah.
life and going through it, and using those things. So
Yeah. How do you think a person can stop their personal life for well, let me say this. How do you think a person can stop their personal life, their personal problems from stepping over into their work environment? Like, what do you think some of the things they can do to keep the two separated?
I think I think that it starts with that self, with that
Yes.
person, right?
Yes.
Because you have two responsibilities, and they both fall on you.
Yeah.
You're being paid a wage to do a
Mhm.
job, and that's what they hired you to do. And you also, if it's using your example, right? You also, that guy, he also had a responsibility to his spouse,
Yeah.
um,
Right.
and that tugged on his emotions. So I think it does take a mentally strong person to be able to do that, because your emotions, when you deal with something as personal as that, is going to be there.
Yeah.
It's almost impossible, in
Yeah.
my opinion, to suppress the emotion.
Yeah.
But if you're mentally strong, you can compartmentalize
Yeah.
those emotions, right? And you can go, okay, I might be frustrated because of a work thing, has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
I have to respond accordingly, right?
Yeah.
Boom, boom, and that's how each circumstance, each situation that day or that week, you just have to approach it like that.
Yeah.
I've been there. One thing that I've also utilized is, even if maybe using that method gets, it's not working for me, it's not being fruitful for me, I'll
Yeah.
find somebody that I trust, and I'll pull
Yeah.
them to the side, and I'll say, hey man, I'm having a really hard time.
Yeah.
This happened. It helps for me to just talk through it.
Yeah.
I might have that person might be like, hey, I'll help you out, man. Don't worry about it. Don't stress. Like, I got your back. I can help you write those notes, or I can help you make those calls, or I can help. I help you a little bit, man. You
Yeah.
know, um, and so those things help out a lot. But that is very hard to do, because
Yeah.
again, the emotions are there.
Yeah.
But again, I think it's mental at that point.
I definitely agree with you on that. I've been very fortunate through the Lord to be able to suppress my emotions when things are going on at home. And I
Yeah,
think part of the reason too, because I'm extremely private, period.
yeah,
You know,
for
I don't need
sure.
everybody in my business, and even if stuff ain't
Yep,
going bad, I just because I
yep,
know how people are. People gossip, people
yep.
backstab, people see some, and by the time they get to the fifth or sixth person, it's not what it what like it's just.
Yeah,
And so for me, I'm one of those people like, you know, I just don't,
yeah,
if I do have something personal going on, I know how to step out. I will let my manager know, hey, I kind of got a situation going on. So you may see me take a break, a few
yeah.
breaks, to kind of like get my thoughts together and things like that. So
Right.
I will do that, but without even going without going into too many details from my direct supervisor,
Correct.
especially if I don't trust that person. If I know that
Yeah.
person to be like the staff, gossip and keep up drawing. Oh, you're not going to know none of that. I'm gonna give you
Right.
enough to respect your position so that you can know that I'm accountable to you and this is what I'm doing. Hey, I'm hey, you know what, the break is 10 minutes. Hey, I'm gonna stay 5 minutes over because I'm dealing with something like this. So, without going to detail,
For
it's
sure.
so important for me um, because once again, I hear even at the office, I hear so much. When I say I hear, I mean it in terms of people like, oh well, such is off work, because it's a lot of speculation. They don't know why, and I'm talking about in previous
Right,
jobs and just things like that. It's
right,
important, so.
for
But
sure.
yeah, let me ask you a question: is stress ever a good thing? If so, how?
Yeah, actually, it is, man. And because I feel like, there's a saying, that says pressure, but bust pipes or
Yeah,
and builds diamonds,
yeah,
right? So I feel like, at least for me, personal experience, operating, because we're talking about workplace stress,
yeah,
at work under stress has taught me a lot about myself.
yes,
You
yes,
learn so much about yourself,
yes,
how much you're able to, what you're able to handle, what you're not
yeah,
able to handle. How you actually respond, verbally, emotionally, physically, your body language, when you're under stress. Um, all of those things, man. And actually, if you allow yourself to be teachable and kind of vulnerable, um, it can help you tremendously in life.
yeah, 100%, 1,000,000%. And I love the fact that you brought that up about being able to be teachable, coachable,
Yeah,
being able to be mentored and vulnerable, with to a certain extent and with the right
just
people.
understand.
You
Yeah,
know, the teaching, the coaching, that for me, that comes with the territory, especially when it has an authority figure in my life, whether it's a police or whether it's my boss, whether it's a
right.
clergyman, or you know, I don't know. That works for me. Like it really, because I used to be of the mindset when I was younger in my 20s, like, oh, I know everything. But as you get
Yeah,
older, life start happening, you know
yeah,
that no, you don't know everything. And there are people that will come in your space that could drop some nuggets of life in you, you know what I'm saying, to
for
help you
sure,
along the way.
for sure.
So we have to be teachable. Well, we should be teachable, like say that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
should be. That's the key word.
yeah. So I think we only got, let me look, let me see. I think we got a couple of minutes left. Yeah, like three. So I'm gonna ask you uh one more question. What is some advice you can give somebody that you feel well, let me back up. What is advice that you can give somebody that is in a stressful situation at work, but love the work that they do to help the clientele, but the environment, the upper management, they don't feel supported? Like, what advice would you give somebody like that who really want to be doing the work, but it's all these other things kind of working against that person? What would you do? What advice would you give them?
Well, first and foremost, we already touched on it, but is pray. If they
Yeah,
believe in prayer,
yeah,
or again, I'm talking to somebody that just they don't pray, but maybe they do other stuff.
yeah,
They meditate, which is kind of like a form of prayer, or whatever you do to find peace and to recenter yourself. That's number one. Number two is, that's when you really just have to ask yourself, why do I do this? It's because you already said it, because I love to do it. Number
yeah,
three, dial in.
yeah,
Dial in, take it up a notch,
yeah,
right? Take it up a notch with, even with your mindset, with your daily disciplines. You get up in the morning and pray every time. Make sure you get up in the morning praying, meditating, going into
yeah,
work. Get dialed in. Keep
yeah,
the main thing. Because if you dial in and you're going in and you have a focus, uh, day in, day out, number one, your productivity will be there. So whatever stress or pressures you're receiving from upper management, those will this should take care of themselves, because your productivity is there, right? Because you're focused in, you're dialed in. Number two,
yeah,
you're so focused that all that stuff, man, it's not gonna, it's harder for it to reach you, man.
yeah,
When you're that dialed in, when you're that focused. And again, it's hard, but again, alluding to what we were saying earlier, just compartmentalizing, being mentally strong as much as possible, and recentering yourself.
Yes.
Those things are humongous. Um, and that would be my advice for sure.
Yeah, that's really, really good. And I'm glad that you kind of gave those steps because once again, there are people who are in the workplace, and let's be real, a lot of us, our kind of people, Black people, meaning
Yeah,
who don't necessarily know how to navigate, how to advocate for themselves. Because a lot of times they
yeah,
feel like, okay, I'm Black, I need my job, I don't have any other source of income, I got a family, whatever the case may be. And a
yeah,
lot of them, they just take it, instead of
yeah,
knowing their rights, instead of knowing how to go and advocate for themselves. So if anybody was watching this particular program and you're in a situation where you
yes,
need support or need advice or need help advocating for yourself because of a toxic work environment, or you're not getting support from the people you should, meaning your management, HR, whoever, then know that you have a right, know that you
yes.
can, reach out and get other support to help you deal with whatever you're dealing with. And that's it for this edition of Mental Health Matters. If you enjoyed this particular show, if you would like a copy of this show, or if you would like to be a guest on our show, please dial 916-366-4600. Thank you.